Hello everybody, it is me, Game Penguin 21, and today, well, with the new upcoming games and things, and, well, me wanting to do another video on Harman Smith, this was the actual video that I wanted to do that everyone else was passing around. But I wanted to talk at least about the Xbox Game Pass price increase and do another Harman Smith video. So yeah, you're getting another Harman week because I don't cover Harman Smith enough on this channel, at least in my personal opinion. But this is another video that's inevitably is going to be probably worth talking about because it is about Pal World. Now, as a person who actually kind of likes Pal World, though it's one of those games that kind of is like Minecraft where I have to be in the right mood for it, so it's not always something that I'm in for, but they are releasing a new game, Pal World Farming Simulator. I don't remember the specifics of what it was, but Pal World is releasing its new game, and, well, it would seem that Pal World itself, or at least the people involved, are looking to make it something actually kind of cool. Now, again, I don't personally like farming simulators, but it does look nice, and I mean, if you like farming simulators, you get another one, and another one from a pretty decent set of people. So yeah, it's gonna probably be available on all sorts of things, and Nintendo is not happy. Well, Nintendo is never happy, really, until like they get all the money, but Nintendo fanboys are also not happy, which brings us to today's video on, well, with Harman Smith. And, well, let's just see what he has to say about the whole Pal World farming game thing. But before we get into that, if you like what it is that I do, want to support me any other way, shape, or form, other than like, subscribe, which is always enough. Links down to everything in the description below. I do release music on Bandcamp as well as stream every week here on Sunday at 12 p.m. EST. I might actually start doing, for this month only, doing 2 streams a week, so you might want to take a look at that. Not for this week, though, because there's probably things that I'm going to be doing, but for 12 p.m. EST on Sundays, and I might be doing a later stream on Thursdays, maybe around like 5 or 6 p.m. because, you know, it's not the weekend. So we'll see if I feel that way. If this video comes out Tuesday, then that's the correct announcements, but if it comes out Thursday, well, then it probably starting next week, I'll do that because October is usually a slow month. Plus, I have a lot of horror games to get through because of, well, funny things. With all that being said, let's get started.
So with the upcoming Pal World spin-off game, Pal Farm, on the horizon, we need to talk about the conspiracy that I believe that until Pokapia was announced, this game did not exist. Yes, I believe, and I'm not alone in this, in that Pocket Pair produced a trailer for a game that did not enter production until right now. Okay, so I think their official claim that the game was in development for a year before formally announced doesn't make any sense considering like Pal World still being worked on and everything else they do. Like Pal World Farming Sim, whatever it's called. This thing, the timing of the announcement is just super shady because we just got Pokapia. We just got confirmation that, like, you know, Nintendo contracted the Dragon Quest Builders guys to work on Pokapia, which by the way, you keep seeing people like insist that Nintendo ripped off Dragon Quest. Well, I certainly don't see the Dragon Quest team saying that. You know, I certainly don't see, like, they're working together on a game. So
Okay, so there's a lot to go through here, but the main few points that I think that I'm going to just get to, starting, of course, off with the fact that he says, like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory that it hasn't been worked on for over a year. For one, how the fuck do you know? You're not Bucky, you're not any of the people who actually work at the studio or worked on the game. You don't know when or how it does that. Two, one of the interesting things about this farming simulator is that a lot of the assets and a lot of the, you know, models that would be used for the animations for a lot of this, they're already done. I mean, again, it's just literally taking the same models and just making something new with it. It's not impossible to think that, you know, this would be technically a smaller game in scope or in development costs because of just how many of the pals have already been made. Again, that's just seems to be obvious, but that's besides the point. Same thing with Pokemon. I mean, Pokemon can basically pump out these games a lot without having to make some of the new models because, you know, they reuse some of the old ones and they do some of the other stuff. But that's besides the point. I do think that the timing of when they drop the trailer is a little bit interesting because guess what? A lot of the games that do the same thing, that, well, back in the day, they would have these same sorts of things where two similar games came out at similar times with similar announcements, just whenever they were ready. So, I don't know. Occam's razor and all that. But I think the funniest part about this is that he says that, oh, Dragon's Quest is working with Pokemon. That doesn't mean that they ripped them off. No, that just means that they are allowing, well, not really allowing, but that just means that they don't really hold a grudge like what Nintendo does all the time with a lot of their shit. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It just means that maybe they don't have the, you know, pulling power to be like, oh, well, you know, you kind of ripped off our designs. And if you see any of the design stuff, you can see that they're not exactly the same. Obviously, there's enough of a difference between them. But, you know, just take a look for Dragon's Quest versus Pokemon. There's a thing for it. Anyway.
Please, like, stop pretending as if Nintendo can't, like, as if Nintendo plagiarized Dragon Quest. It isn't true. Neither party thinks that. Nobody thinks that outside of Power World fanboys. Anyway, so, like, they contracted the Dragon Quest Builders team at Koei Tecmo, and they are producing a new Pokemon-themed Builders game. You know, Pokapia. You know, looks great, looks exciting. Anyone who's played Dragon Quest Builders knows it's going to be peak. You know, Dragon Quest Builders is awesome. I'm super excited for it. Everyone was thrilled about Pokapia. Except Power.
I mean, I guess maybe we didn't know about Power World having Power World farms. Like, no one really was unexcited for this game. I mean, for me, I'm not excited for it because I just don't like farming simulators in general. And I'm not excited for really either game, but Power World probably would be the one that I would, or palfarm, whatever the heck. The new Power World farming simulator would probably be the one that I would go for just because Pokapia just looks kind of creepy to me. At least the main character does. So probably not, just for the sake of, I don't think so. Plus, again, I find it interesting how he says, like, oh yeah, they're working with the Dragon Quest Builders team. So why the fuck is it? See, here's the question, right? If Dragon's Quest Builders is allowed to be, like, taken over and / ripped off to make Pokapia, why is it so bad that Pal World can do, like, the same thing where they take the same sorts of, you know, design-wise and choice stuff? Why is it that one gets an exception and is like, oh yeah, since they're working with Nintendo, that means that they get Nintendo's blessing, but because Pal World has decided to go against Nintendo, that means that they are the evil ones, you know? Even though, technically speaking, competition, I don't get this.
World fans. So what we saw immediately after Pokapia came out was that people were complaining that it looked too much like Dragon Quest Builders, even though they contracted the developer. You know, it was like it looked the same as other farming games, and that Nintendo would go after them next. You know, lots of coping and seething. And now, you know, Power World announced their farming sim. Suddenly, that's like this huge hype announcement that really needs to be like praised and worshipped. You know, like. And I really do have to question the timing of this and like the behavior of the fans, because like there's nothing special or interesting about Power World farming. Like, it's not going to stick out from the competition. It's not unique, fun, fresh, exciting. It is just clearly just a blatant cash grab trying to garner attention from.
I kind of think in a very weird way it's a little bit of the opposite, that Nintendo's Pokapia just doesn't look good at all, at least in my personal opinion. And I feel like it's trying to take away from a bunch of the farming simulator stuff. Maybe not necessarily Pal World is what I will say. I'll give it a little bit of a difference there, but it doesn't look interesting to me. It doesn't look like good, and especially with you making the correct like statements that you've been making, where it's like, oh yeah, they hired the same team, they are taking the Dragon's Quest builders stuff. Don't you think that's kind of taking away people from Dragon Quest builders stuff if they're hiring the team, doing the same thing, having it look the practically the same thing as Dragon Quest builders and such? Isn't that like worse because they're not using a lot of their original ideas and just kind of, slapping Pokemon on the front of it? I mean, yeah, there is somewhat of a difference, I guess, because you get to use the Pokemon's powers or whatnot. But again, if you're making this big comparison to Dragon's Quest Builders, don't you think that means that they're ripping off Dragon's Quest Builders for whatever reason? You know?
Nintendo's Pokepia project, right? So when you keep that in mind, when you keep the timing, when you keep in mind the Power World fan culture, when you keep in mind their behavior, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that the trailer was produced in a couple of weeks using a bunch of like Power World assets, and there's not actually a game to go along with it yet. I think Nintendo announced Pokepia, and Pocket Pair immediately produced this trailer that isn't based on any actual gameplay footage, and are just going to try and make a game around it. Because if you look at like Legends, if you look at like Power World, like a lot of what it plagiarized came from Legends Arceus specifically. Like even though that came out after like the Game Awards trailer in 2021. So like Power World seems to be able to plagiarize mechanics and assets like uh during development. So to me, I think what this means is that they produced a trailer to hype up a game that doesn't exist yet, and they're now in the process of making it a thing and pumping it out sometime next year. You know, because they knew that because Nintendo did something similar with their.
I don't think that that's true at all, but whatever. I know that was a little bit of a long clip there, and there was a lot of things to kind of go through, but you can hear what it means that it doesn't make any sense of what he's saying. He's literally saying that because they were not able to, they were saying, oh yeah, they were plagiarizing mechanics and things. First of all, I really don't think that you should be able to copyright or patent any mechanics with anything having to do with video games. That is just a stupid, dumb practice. I think that video game mechanics, not the code, they're two different things, but mechanics themselves shouldn't be patentable or copyrightable because they should 100% be treated as though like recipes, because yeah, that's what they are. They are general guidelines for an existing process in a video game. Doesn't matter the code, doesn't matter the other stuff. And Nintendo, again, hasn't pursued literally anyone else other than Pal World when it comes to this sort of thing, at least kind of. A lot of the patents and a lot of the stuff, if you would take a look at the lawsuit, it's just all kind of stupid and dumb that people are still defending Nintendo even after their stuff that they're trying to do, they're trying to pull, because Nintendo doesn't care. They just they don't, and it's annoying to me. But to get back on topic here, while I don't believe that the Pal World devs, who are a smaller team, mind you, a very small team, which I mean, maybe not, aren't unable to produce like some sort of random trailer for stuff. I technically again believe the actual developers, namely Bucky, who actually I covered in the end of month roundup last week. So there's that. Overall, no, I really don't think that that's the case, that they just produced a trailer for a game that does not exist. So yeah, but again, it's not uncommon that trailers of similar games come out. There again, if you really want to take a look at some interesting game stuff where there's actually no gameplay, doesn't Pokepia also not really have gameplay? Or at least not as far as I could tell. And again, this isn't like the big AAA dogs that actually produce just a trailer that is completely cinematic and has nothing to do with the gameplay at all. Brother.
Air farming game, that they'd be able to get some kind of hyper attention for their project. Like, I think that's what's happened. And like, considering like how fucking Bucky, that fucking retard on Twitter who works there, like, considering how much he seethed about people like pointing this out, like how the timing of this was really odd and how it doesn't make any sense. Like, um, I think it is true. Like, I think Pow World,
Oh boy. Oh boy. First of all, please don't insult people like that, and please, YouTube, I didn't say it, he said it. Ow, my eye, fuck. I think my eyes are hurting because I just saw some bullshit. Ow, 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 ow.
produced this trailer purely to grift off of Pokemon hate. Like, that's kind of my mentality, because that's the only time anybody talks about them at all, is in regards to like the Pokemon controversy. Like, when they did that stupid like fishing game, nobody gave a shit. Like, nobody's playing Craftopia, like, nobody knows nobody cares about. Or
Again, I find it interesting how that's the case because, well, it's not. A lot of people do care about the company itself because, well, we don't want to see them just be bullied by the bigger people. And people are like, oh yeah, it's Pokemon recreated plagiarism. It's like, again, that's why people are making the contents that, like, Pokemon already kind of plagiarized. Because if you look at Dragon's Quest, they look exactly the same in terms of designs and stuff. And again, if Pokemon themselves are going after design stuff, doesn't that mean that in turn that, kind of, sort of, they shouldn't be throwing stones in glass houses? Just saying, Harman. It's so wild to me how people say, oh yeah, they only really talk about them when they talk about the Pokemon thing. You mean the lawsuit that Nintendo started? The lawsuit that a lot of people said wasn't going to happen, myself included, and I eat my words. Like, the thing that basically happened, and that is probably one of the biggest and most stupidest lawsuits to ever exist in the terms of the gaming industry. That lawsuit, dude, there's a reason for that, because it's bullshit. It really shouldn't have happened, but immaterial.
anything they do outside of like Pokemon related plagiarism. So yeah, like, I think that Pow World's thing going forward is trying to fly as close to the sun as possible, trying to plagiarize Nintendo, trying to like continue plagiarizing their content, trying to like antagonize fans, keeping themselves relevant, hoping for another hit, and hoping that they aren't going to get cracked down on hard by the Japanese court system. And I think it's very clear at this point. Like, I have been black.
No, as far as I can tell, they're not actually losing the lawsuit. It's just that Nintendo seems to be dragging their feet within the lawsuit. A lot of the actual defenses and things that they have made in terms of the lawsuit, from what we know publicly, seems to be going more in Palworld's favor. But at the same time, it's harder to kind of explain that. Again, because we don't know the actual things of the lawsuit, because, the lawsuits like this take fucking time. And overall, if they are still within operations and still being able to produce games, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're losing money. But, I mean, they could be, which is why they're bringing out a new game. But, again, that's besides the point. Overall, I'm not even sure if the lawsuit has gone into the court system yet. It's just that Nintendo themselves are still arguing and still saying, hey, we're going to basically bully these people into submission because that's what they do. Like, they seriously destroy people's lives, apparently, for far less than what they're doing here. So, yeah. Also, it doesn't surprise me that he's blocked on Twitter by the Palworld devs, so...
On Twitter by them for pointing this out, that they are losing the lawsuit. Like all of their attempts at like trying to circumvent it just aren't going to result in anything. They haven't won. They haven't like been able to produce new content. Their contract with Sony isn't going to go anywhere. Like Power World just like really had this very specific business strategy of committing straight up crimes to try and undermine Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. And we're supposed to just believe that stealing mechanics.
Sir, there's a thing called art and quote unquote stealing assets and stuff. Stealing assets was completely disproven day like week 0 apparently, because everyone was like, oh well, they just have similar stuff to it. You can model similar things to it. It looked different enough, and again, they did the same thing with Dragon's Quest, and no one really batted an eye. Not even the Dragon's Quest guys, like you said before. Stealing mechanics, those aren't things that should be copyrightable or patentable in the first place, as I've explained. And if that were the case, literally all FPS shooters would probably have been sued by id a long time fucking ago, because guess what? They were the first ones who really did like the first-person shooter stuff. And majority of those mechanics are the same across like everywhere. So like stealing that shit isn't really stealing, because again, mechanics shouldn't be a thing. They're tools to be used. And I don't know what the fuck else he said there, but they weren't stealing anything, and they weren't trying to just compete with Nintendo. And it's infuriating to me how people on a Nintendo court were like, oh well, they're clearly stealing all the features and the gameplay assets and all that other stuff. And it's like, have you never seen any other fucking video game ever? Like, all the games are kind of a mishmash of other games if you make those weird comparisons enough. Like, Devolver Digital makes games that have like specific mechanics that they usually do, and they usually have some of the same mechanics as other games, but just twisted in a weird way. Like, every game has enough of the same mechanics that you could, in theory, say that every game is stealing from each other. It's the same thing as regular art in an art museum. It's like if I use red paint and another person uses red paint, I'm not stealing that other person's red paint. I'm just using my own red paint to make a different art that is utilizing red paint for whatever reason. Just because you use the same materials, the same bases, the same brushes, the same sorts of techniques and mechanics and stuff, doesn't mean that you're plagiarizing another person's thing. Like, that's just not how this works at all. Like, this has never been how this works in terms of art. And I think that I'm done. I'm at 20 minutes again because I yap a whole bunch about this stuff. But dude, that's the last straw. Saying that they stole mechanics, saying that they're like, oh, this is all this and blah blah blah. Like, no. You don't get to speak anymore. We're done here. So what did we learn today, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I think very simply, Harman is still Harman, and quite honestly, it's really dumb how Harman is still like doing this. And I find this really also dumb because if you watch the first part of this little two-parter here, you'll notice that Harman is actually putting in some weirdly interesting effort here. I mean, if you notice, he actually has what seems to be like a full-on microphone, though I'm not sure if he's actually using it. He might be, but whatever. He also has a camera that seemingly follows him, but it still doesn't seem to have like a good quality to it. I don't know what or how he does it. There's also seems to be cuts and actual like projection value, and even his thumbnails are not the auto-generated thumbnails that you get on YouTube anymore. So, whoop-de-doo. The dude still creates like 15 videos a day and just spurts them out at like all hours of the whatever the fuck. So yeah, and he still has his books on Amazon and stuff. And quite honestly, I think that what I'm gonna do for at least a video, at least in the back pocket, would be that I'm gonna look at the actual, or I'm gonna do that. You know what? If I hit 1.5k subscribers, I might try to do a Harman Smith reading video if I can find his stuff. But overall, I think that'll about do it for this episode of I Ran Into a Microphone for a long time, because clearly people need to be taught some interesting lessons about copyright. My name is GamePango21. If you like what it is I do in any other way, shape, or form, I'd like to subscribe, which always enough links and everything below. I do create music on the Bandcamp, and I do also have other sorts of ways that you can support me on the Ko-fi and other places like that. Links down to everything below. I do stream every Sunday at 12 p.m. EST, and I'm most likely going to be starting to do a double stream where I stream on Thursdays, probably around 5 or 6 p.m. EST. Make sure you check their local times for that. And if that announcement actually did happen, make sure you follow for more of that, because I'm going to be playing a bunch of stuff this month for Halloween. We're going to be doing spooky shit. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. My name is GamePango21 again, and a peace.
Hey man, can I get a favor? Yeah, sure, I know, see